because what I mentioned that some of you are asking to have more understanding and even to have it in English. So that is what in my mind. Is it okay?
ما في مشكلة أستاذة.
ما في مشكلة ها؟
ما في مشكلة إن شاء الله.
لأن بالنسبة للنقط يعني you see كل شيء موجودة في يعني سلايدات لأن نعم وخاصة لا سيما حينما أنا أعرف بأن هناك كذلك طلبة ليست من فرقة يعني واحدة وأنا أقول يعني كل مذكرة يعني مقبولة لأن المحاضر أو المحاضرة هو الذي سيصحح يعني أوراق في الامتحان. So I think I'm here just to have, for me it is very important to give you a kind of background of this ethics, because in this background you will understand how to relate what is in Islam and relate to the theories that we discuss in class, and also some new thinkers about this. Because as I mentioned علم الأخلاق مع أنه شيء مشهور يعني we learn الأخلاق منذ الصغر, okay, from our childhood. Every time we listen about أخلاق, but actually ilmu أخلاق has a very high expectation this day, especially when people are talking about value-based education. Okay? Then we understand ilmu al-akhlaq is quite different from other disciplines of knowledge in Islam. Of course, namely, it is about aqidah, okay, it is about fiqh or sharia, and then the third is akhlaq. So we have to understand that علم الأخلاق يركز على الإنسان, okay. فلذلك مفهوم علم الأخلاق هي في أحد التعريفات إحدى التعريفات لعلم الأخلاق هي علم الإنسان. علم الإنسان. So the expectation is of course to understand how it grooms man, and that becomes a very important challenge, because we know that theories from the West, so they try actually to have the best theory that they can have, but we believe, of course, it is akhlaq that comes from Al-Quran wa Sunnah is the best. And in fact, as I mentioned always in the class, that Hamka himself, one of the Mufassir, okay, in the Southeast Asia, Indonesia specifically, mentioned that akhlaq is actually one of the mu'jizah of the Quran. So now we want to understand, especially as I mentioned, we do not highlight, we do not much focus for this final exam about the يعني موضوعات في التمهيد, okay, المدخل إلى علم الأخلاق, لأن نحن ناقشنا في بداية السمستر والأسئلة يعني the questions were already asked during the midterm, but it is a kind of continuation from that, because I tried to make the correct understanding starting from the meaning of akhlaq itself, rather than understanding that akhlaq is only about the list of good and bad. That is one thing. So actually akhlaq is the whole system about grooming man in his life, grooming the action. It's not only about certain adab eating, as I mentioned. So that is one thing. And second, when we compare between akhlaq and qanun, okay, why? Okay, we don't want to look down over qanun or fiqh, but here is for us to understand what is akhlaq. So among others, because akhlaq is not only about telling about external aspect of man, okay, it's not only about action, it's something internal. Khuluq begins from something internal. Then when it is internal, then it is about psychology, it is about spirituality, it is about thinking, and etc. And another thing is because akhlaq, other than you have in your notes, okay, of course I say I don't want to cover that, but what is very important here for us to understand how the meaning of good in akhlaq is not something very specific as what we understand in the ahkam al-fiqhiyya. Many people think that akhlaq is only about rule, only one specific rule, and that's it. No, when we talk about akhlaq, the meaning of good has been discussed, and we know the good in Al-Quran, especially, of course, supported also by the Hadith, is something that is very generic by nature, and something that you have to position at the right place. So this is the beginning of what is the problem of al-akhlaq. So we have to understand the problems. Why? Because later on we want to see, okay, how the attempt of the Western theorists try to say this is about akhlaq. And later on we want to understand, okay, in Islam, how it is. So this is the thing. So if I were to draw, I'm sorry because I don't have that pen here to draw the notes. We just understand that at the first level, of course, especially we are people belongs to religious study. I mean, al-adyan, reveal knowledge, isn't it? Or Islamic studies, whatever they call it. Normally, we look at the God aspect, especially at the level of what is the ahkam, including good and bad. So that is one level. Actually, in akhlaq, after we understand that akhlaq is something very generic, we have the second layer. In Islam, we have to identify at what level, what are the things, the strength that Allah has decided for us. The most thing is in our mas'uliyah. So that's why we will, finally understand the main framework of akhlaq Islamiyah into the concept of al-ilzam, the obligation, the concept mas'uliyah. We don't have the concept of sanction here, so we go straight to the concept of niyyah and the concept of al-juhd. Okay, so this is actually to show how the akhlaq penetrates into the life of man. So there are things, complication here, okay? Because I know that at your level, of course, you only, at first, I know that you will always look into what Allah has decided for us about the concept of good and bad. And many of us think that good and bad is only based on what fiqh mentioned about it. But actually it is not. In the Quran, talking about a lot of attributes of man, okay, about mujrim, about the ya'dilun, ya'qilun, muttaqun, okay, a lot of the good or traits of man are named after something that is having us, not only for us, but it is related to God. So that is the first. That's why aqidah and akhlaq, actually it is combination. In Islam, there is nothing that we do here, nothing to be related to God. So that's the thing that we have to understand. Okay, then we have what is decided by God, then by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then the concept of good. So that is only the first layer. The second layer, we have to understand human decision. Human decision comes with human spirit of doing. And then we are going to go for, why we are doing that. So in Islam, in akhlaq, the most important thing we have to understand that Islam allows this. We know that we are not free, mutlaqan, kullu shay' lillahi ta'ala, but we are talking about something that in the future that we do not know. It is about our target of something, when we want to do something. So this is a very important process in akhlaq. We are not talking about something that is already happened, because something that is already happened, it is lillahi ta'ala. Allahu alladhi al-qadir, al-alim, ila akhiri. We are not. So we have to really understand what is the scope of akhlaq. The scope of akhlaq is before something happened. Because it is a man. We know that in the Quran, consistently saying that we are actually choosing, even in our aqidah. So whatever the act of choosing, that is actually related to akhlaq. So something that we nurture ourselves, our psychology, our aqal, and etc. So that is the thing. And after that comes the third layer, that is real action. Okay, real action, something that we want to do, but once we say that it is Allah who decides, then it is out of our control. But we know that Sunnatullah said that majadda wajada, for example. So when we do something good, and so why I'm mentioning all this? Okay, and then later on we discuss about the importance of al-ilzam. So we have to understand in akhlaq, it's not only about telling you what is good and bad. And good and bad also is quite very complex. If I will say, because this is related to the theories that we are going to discuss later, especially when we come in, we bring in Nietzsche, okay? Because the expectation of the postmodern is actually to look for answer for the life that is very complex, uncertain. So they thought that the religion are not prepared for that. So just I remember I presented a paper after the COVID-19. I think UUM is calling inviting me during the philosophy day. And then I mentioned about, and then at the beginning I mentioned I take a photo about MH17, how they cannot look 17 yang hilang sampai sudah tu kan. 370, isn't it? And another 17 is already the flight that was attacked, but we have another who missing. Then they were looking in the Pacific Ocean, then they could not find, because they start to describe how uncertain is the wave. So I'm talking here about the concept of man. So man is not only something that is very easy, you just tell this everything. No, we have to understand that man is very complex. Even this is what is mentioned by the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create man, then okay. So I'm sorry if I'm very because I want to show why ilzam is like that. So then we are talking about, as I mentioned, not only about good and bad, what is that, and understand the dynamic, and then how the good and bad is range, and it is meant to decide which good that you want. Another thing is that because Islam is talking about what is the expectation of Islam. So this is what most of the times the Muslim think, that because in Maqasid Sharia, for example, in fiqh, normally we concentrate on the daruriyat, as if something that is tahsiniyat and even akhlaq itself is seen to be something that is optional, not important. So this is wrong. So that's why in al-ilzam we discuss, okay, what from the Ras. So ilzam is basically give you the power of doing. To what extent Islam want it. So this is actually the why al-ilzam is important, because al-ilzam later on, if you compare with the concept of wajib according to Kant, is something much, much dynamic. Okay, so Kant, to some extent, Darras, Muhammad Abdullah Darras, praise, at least Kant bring back the importance of responsibilities compared to utilitarianism, but still, the Kant concept of wajib is not dynamic as what we understand in Islam. So this is the thing, okay, al-ilzam. And then mas'uliyah is very, I would say it is very something known. Yeah, what are we want to understand how the mas'uliyah is something comprehensive in Islam. So basically, mas'uliyah is about the extension of the ahkam, the ahkam of doings, the rulings in fiqh, and then we extend it into what is in akhlaq. So what are the responsibilities of a man, of a husband, of wife. So that's a mas'uliyah, how it's very comprehensive, how it is also very balanced between al-huquq wal-wajibat. So that is the nature of mas'uliyah in Islam. And then how in Islam it is a harmony between individual responsibilities and the social responsibilities. So that is in ilzam. And after that, we go to intention. So basically, ilzam, mas'uliyah, is belong to the first layer, because it is the system belong to God. This is the best system, belongs to God, but it has a number of characteristic that makes it ready to be a dynamic system. Because the general understanding of human beings, all over the world, they think that when it is about religious ethics, so they don't like religious ethics, including Islam, because they say that when it is the name of religion, everything comes from God, it is very God-centered, and God is asking you just to, the religion is asking you just to dictate you to do things. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. So whereas in Islam, it is not that. Okay, Islam, al-akhlaq al-islamiyah, from the very beginning, it is not that much on dictating what to do, but what is more important is how, the energy of doing. For example, we understand from al-ilzam. So supposedly every Muslim is looking for the best that I can do. Okay, if you cannot go to the front, you cannot push yourself, that it is not enough. That's why I say min manzur al-akhlaq al-islami. The thing is that when you are able to do something better, but you choose to do something less, but it is still does not touch on something haram, ethically it is not enough. This is the meaning of integrity, actually. That's why integrity is very important, very difficult to define. So something that's supposedly like that, then you want to do lesser than that. So this is this is the concept ilzam, okay, and then the concept mas'uliyah, as I mentioned, mas'uliyah also like fiqh, because the good and bad mentioned by the Quran, by the Hadith. So everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, revelation. But this revelation is very dynamic to the concept of man, to the human life, and etc. After that, we go to the concept of intention and the concept of juhd. The intention al-juhd actually belongs to the second level. Second level meaning to say it is going to the life of man. That's why we have to understand akhlaq is something, if you remember, I always mention that akhlaq is normally in fiqh or even in good and bad, in akhlaq, when we understand it as revelation, it is like 2D, something that on paper. But when it comes to human is the one to, as if that stand up from the paper to the reality. That's why we have to understand that our life, not only 3D, we are 4D, 5D, even more. We are in time, we are moving, we have our, environment, contacts, and etc. So this makes the concept of niyyah is important, and also the al-juhd is important, because it is really what people do it, what people groom it in themselves. Then we understand that supposedly the niyyah is not only something that is very dry by nature, but it is something that lead you to do something. Okay, you really want to do it. You really want to bring this into action, into what you have it in your life. So this is the importance of niyyah. The first layer, niyyah is something discussed again in fiqh as only a pillar, isn't it? Ruknun min arkani salah wa rukunun min arkani as-sawm ila akhirih. But in akhlaq, we are looking into what is the role of niyyah. So niyyah is something for you to decide, and then to be clear of what you want to do. And I don't bring this into our discussion in class, but as I mentioned, I think some of you, when I ask you to do a kind of bonus mark, I think I gave you pages on al-juhd, I think, but some of you did on the niyyah. So I can see that some of you understand it well. So the niyyah in Islam actually is bringing us, okay, first at the layer of selection of, you are doing salah, then you do it, you understand that this is important, that is fardu, and I'm doing salatul maghrib, 3 rakaat. So the same thing you extend to other, when you want to go to class, so I'm going to class, and this is something very good, and that's why Islam always highlight us to have encourage us to have that niyyah, and then we have the ibadah. Okay, if we just walk, we just buy food without niyyah, then we don't have the reward. But in akhlaq, because it actually makes us to be determined of doing things, and we are aware of what we are doing. And according to Daras, niyyah actually is also bringing us to what is after that, a kind of process until we achieve. But I don't want to, that's why I say, for the sake of examination, you just have to read what is in the slides. Inshallah, it will be enough. especially those who are not studying with me. You may have different slides from my class, but don't worry. So that's why I'm here talking something general so that you can relate. Then intention, and then we have al-juhdul mubda' wal-juhdul mudafa'ah. So from there we understand that actually the expectation of action is something not of dictating. So we just not do, you just imagine in the one day you become a worker, especially you will be a grade A worker, at least with the graduate certificate under bachelor degree. You will be grade last time grade 41, I don't know, now they changed it to SSPA. What is this? Why it is very, because it's something that you have to manage things, you have to be creative, you have to know things, relate things. So this is actually belong to the al-mubda', something that is creative. So the expectation of akhlaq in Islam, and this is also coming back to the time of the excellence, the generations of the Quran, isn't it? Al-Jailul al-Qurani, during the Prophet time and after that, because actually these are the things that they understand it direct from the Quran, something that you have to do, you explore this, you explore that. But that's why they found many theories about science, etc., because coming, okay, from the awareness of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it comes to something creative. Actually, the action also is creative. When we do something, we want to, like as I mentioned in class, you want to be a good student, you want to be a good mother, you want to be a good father. You cannot just follow and then you want to do something that is not bad. No, it is not enough. You have to move, what is, how to have, good child, how to solve this problem, how to that. It is actually a very related to juhdul mubda'. So from there, we understand the expectation of akhlaq in our life. And that is important. Why? Because we want to relate. Okay. And after that only we come with what is in the Western theory. Okay. Western theory. So we start with the theory of the, so I hope I can finish by 12:45, and then after that maybe you can have some question and answer. So specifically if you don't understand something from the slide, then this is the time. Okay, then the first thing is we discuss about this is a very established theory. Okay, established theory. Of course, it is the theory of Aristotle. So attending to the theory, it is a theory. So you cannot, a theory is something that you just try to understand what they want to bring. But at least from here, we understand that when it is considered to be theory in akhlaq, then you can just imagine that akhlaq is something very much about psychology. So it really breaks your, how to say that? Because before this, we thought that akhlaq is just like list of good and bad. But actually, when we go to that's why it is ilmul akhlaq, it is Islamic ethics. Then we understand further. So akhlaq is basically related to psychology because it is something internal. It's something that where you need to balance yourself, pertaining to quwa al-thalatha, isn't it? Quwa aqlani, okay, quwa shahwani, quwa al-ghadabiyah. So you just imagine. So this is about akhlaq. Only when you can balance this, then you bring to the, what is the al-adala, okay? And then generally it's about that. And then when it comes to Al-Ghazali, of course, Al-Ghazali have a kind of Islamization, okay, Islamized this theory. Of course, structurally, Al-Ghazali still have the same, but if you go into the definition of Al-Quwa Al-Ghadabiyya, Al-Shaja'ah, everything, you will find that compared to the West, of course, they are just based on what is in the reason, but in Al-Ghazali, of course, it comes together with the Sharia, because if you ask the human reason, you will not find actually where is actually the middle or what is supposedly. But in Islam, that's why the Shara is very important, because the Shara is the gist of the the main thing of the good and bad, because we are talking about not only one responsibility. Okay, we are talking about a lot of responsibilities in all areas of life. You can just imagine that in the familiar life, something to do with usrah, isn't it? Then that's why in Islam it has a very comprehensive set of rulings, because this is actually from where we begin in our life. When we want to decide for things, we just add on with, sometimes in Islam we have to also understand, by only understanding the ruling, it is not enough. You are the one who should activate it, for example. You are the one who should put it at the place. If you just follow, for example, your hawa, and then you just imagine what will happen. So this is basically why Al-Ghazali see this theory is important, because it is something in line with Islam. But we know at the point when people ask, do Al-Ghazali imitate? So we say that it is not, because at the bigger picture, so everything actually is in the slides. We know that the meaning of Sa'ada, the meaning of Adalah is in which in Al-Ghazali, Imam Al-Ghazali, it will go back to to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and having everything to be in a broader sense in Islam. So that is the thing that we know. But if you know that this theory in the modern days also have people criticize. All this while, before modern, this is the only theory in ethics. So we know that it is good there, but still people can criticize, because it is a theory, isn't it? It doesn't come directly from the Quran. So I know, then you have that, because this theory is considered to be a consequentialist theory, because we are looking into what is bringing us to adalah. We are looking for what is bringing you to the sa'ada. So this is the madhab, or the line of the school that is known to be the school of happiness. So we understand then. We know that when it comes to the modern theories, there are two main theories. One is consequentialist, including the classical theory of Al-Ghazali, and then people put Al-Ghazali and Aristotelian theory into this consequentialist, and in the modern days, it is utilitarianism. So meaning to say that what is different, between Islam? You have to understand that in the philosophy, or in the Western theory, when it is about the theory, for them that's it. Compared to Al-Ghazali, we know that Al-Ghazali, of course, is guided by the whole meaning of religion, but for them it is not. And then, of course, Al-Ghazali goes back to what I mentioned. There's God's rulings, and then when it comes to men, then you can have function role with this, but you still have to know what is the first layer of revelation of God. But for them, this is all. And of course, when you go to utilitarianism, in which it is another theory of consequentialists, it's becoming very very reductionist, because we know utilitarianism from the very beginning is becoming very material, and taking all these consequence to be the reason, the ruling, become the ruling. Whatever bring good, then it is good. Whatever bring bad is bad. So we know that how this principle is very not established. I mean, a lot of criticism. How can you say something that is everything, the hukum, you just imagine in Islam, the hukum is based on, that is why it comes back to our understanding in fiqh. So that is why we have to understand, we need to also limit, we have to understand where is the area in which we can use maqasid sharia. We cannot say that maqasid sharia is everything. That is why the fuqaha, even among madhab Shafi'i, does not consider maslahah to be one of the main, I'm talking about fiqh, but I'm here trying to make you to understand, because if you always look into the consequence to understand the hukum, then of course it is not established. So in utilitarianism, of course, you have many criticism because you just imagine that in the West, in the Western theories, they don't have the layer that I mentioned, coming from God, and then it is the man who decide for us, for our own self. For them, it is everything. When it is man, everything is man, because they already discard, okay, they already disregard about the God aspect of it. So then we understand how utilitarianism is not. And of course, you can relate also with my notes on the, fashal, in the النظريات غير إسلامية, in which they are piecemeal, okay, starting from utilitarianism and then Kantian. So utilitarianism, of course, is not sufficient, because in Islam we have more established concept of right and wrong, and even this right and wrong, even though it's not totally depending on the consequence, but we know that all this ahkam is very much humanistic. Okay, what more when we discuss about akhlaq and etc. So I think that is the thing about utilitarianism. Another school is about Kant. Okay, Kant, and as I mentioned, Kant is very much related to the concept of al-ilzam. So Kant is the one who criticized utilitarianism a lot. Criticized actually the how he brought, how he developed, and he introduced his theory actually because of his criticism, okay, against utilitarianism, because he said we cannot have something on the consequence to build, something that is not stable, something that is not guaranteed to be the reason for the good and bad. For that reason, Kant introduced something. For him, it is something natural in which every human being has this, the goodwill, okay, الشعور الحر, الإرادة الحرية. And then the object of this إرادة الحرية هي الشعور بالواجب. So he said that this is what is in everybody of man, and this is actually what is the ethics all about. So everything goes to the wajib, and then this wajib actually is for uh, every people, every person. And of course, he is trying to come back, as I mentioned, bring back to the importance of al-wajib. So that's why, talking about Kant, we know that al-wajib, yes, it's very important. And we don't have problem because in Islam, we have wajib. We have already list of good and bad. Okay. And what is more, we understand and then we know our mas'uliyah, ilzam, is something that is comprehensive to all aspects of human relationship. But you just imagine Kant does not have any any list of what is supposedly. So you can see that. And also, Kant is very rigid. So when it is wajib, then you have to do it. Even though, and then he does not also recommend for any option in wajib. So what is the priority of wajib? And then to the extent that, and he is very confident that everybody can come to this idea of what is the responsibility, what is the wajib, what is the duty, okay, what is the duty. So basically this is about Kant. So it is good in highlighting about the concept, at least coming back to the concept of wajib, okay. But you see that there are many weaknesses of Kant theory. Okay, the last one, Nietzsche. Okay, so Nietzsche is the theory that brings back, okay, that we have to relate back with what I discussed at the beginning, how people are looking for a system that is able to manage man with all levels of capability and in a very complex life. Because they think by the name of religion, it is only about dry rules and then putting man into a standard, into a standard capacity. That is why Nietzsche introduced, okay, what is the Übermensch, the Superman, and he also highlights about the will to power, because he looks at the religious ethics is something very dry and passive. So this is the problem. This is the proactive way of looking into Nietzsche. I know that many of Muslim people, Muslims, okay, Muslim scholars even, or thinkers, when they want to discuss about Nietzsche, they start to say negative from the very beginning. They say, how can they believe in relativism, you know? But for us here, we want to understand what is actually the niche area, what is actually the main problems that Nietzsche realized. So that is the problem. And because he thinks that religion, by the name of religion, cannot fulfill this. So this is why we have to come back with the real understanding of the concept of intention, the concept of al-juhd in Islam, the concept of al-ilzam, how in Islam, Darros actually is talking about the idealistic, how Islam in the Quran managed to have a system that grew man into the highest level. And because we know that in akhlaq is something prospective, something that we do not know. We have to look for the best. That's why we always praise Prophet Muhammad SAW to be the best model, even though we know we are not capable of achieving at his. So this is about the meaning of the in Islam. But at least we have something to achieve, okay, to climb and to improve our life, in which Nietzsche, to the extent, consider that, you know, what is majority, the herd, okay, is not enough. So every atba, we are just the followers, we are just dictated to do things, so this is not good. So what is master, actually what is Ubermensch, what is the Superman, is the one who is free, who can be very creative and thing. So because in his understanding, the religion cannot have this. That is why we come back with what is the meaning of al-ilzam in Islam, what is the meaning of al-juhd in Islam. So really Islam doesn't look at man to be at the same capacity. In fact, we have Quranic verses telling that man has the darajat. So that's why in Islam, in akhlaq, Islam, we have to understand that the concept of good is of darajat. And it is us trying to improve ourselves until the best that we can have. So that is actually our whole life effort and struggle when it comes to the meaning of akhlaq, which is not, to some extent, I would say Nietzsche is not wrong also, because if he looks into the spirit of the Muslims and etc., that's why I like to watch what happened between Iran and Palestine. I think everybody is quite open and positive with this, because the war is between Iran and Israel. But this is really the spirit that supposedly every Muslim must have, something that we cannot, to some extent, something that we cannot just bypass things. But you know, in our everyday life, we just think that, yeah, no, we are not serious, and we take things, everything to be petty, and then we like to, you know, highlight that this is something that is not important. And for that, for example, Malik bin Nabi say that our society now, Muslim society, is just like a factory. When the sand goes in the factory, the machine, big machine, little by little, we say it's okay, and finally the sand becomes something that can let the whole machinery to be stuck and cannot move. So this is about and he mentioned about the passivity of Muslim. So the problem here is about the Muslims, but not the concept, the system of akhlaq. So that is actually about Nietzsche, whatever you want to say it, but in your answer, as I mentioned, take your slides to be the main reference. Try to memorize from that. Even though I'm delivering it in English today, I don't allow you to answer in English, because we are in Arabic class. That's why you have to, you know, but if if you want to have it, like certain things like explanation, you want to say something, it is quite acceptable. Okay, then we are finished with the Western theories, and the last is in our class we discussed something about Taha Abdul Rahman. So Taha Abdul Rahman also is highlighting, okay, in uh, quite the same line of what I am discussing now, because he introduced about the Aql al-Mujarrad, because many of the scholars are taking Aql al-Mujarrad to be everything in Islam. What is Aql al-Mujarrad? Aql al-Mujarrad is our understanding about abstract things, on the concept of God, on the concept of universe. That is Mujarrad. But people in theology always take this to be something primary, and that's it. Whereas Taha Abdul Rahman said that the final aim of man is actually of human action. So this mujarrad supposedly to be continued. Okay. And second is akal musaddad. Akal musaddad is what we understand, like I mentioned, when we say maqasid, we have the ahkam, and then we try to do something that is in line with this, in line with that, in line with that. So that is akal musaddad. Akal mu'ayyad is where the credibility comes. So we know that Taha Abdul Rahman actually is a figure of tasawwuf. So akal mu'ayyad is basically about the spiritual man who, because of love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he can do a lot of things. He can do everything to be creative. And that's why if you read the pages that I give you, so he comes with the several characteristic of what is the akal al-mu'ayyad, in which many people have overlooked about this akal mu'ayyad. Normally, when it comes to action, we only stop at the akal musaddad. If not, the theology people, they like to quarrel everything on the akal mujarrad, and that's it. Whereas Islam will not be complete without the human performance, human function. That's why we have to bring from the akal mujarrad, it brings to akal musaddad, where we understand the concept of good and bad, and we try to do as much as possible to be in line. But doing this in line is not enough. We have to have another power because of love of God. Of course, he in his book, he also, but I don't give you this one. He also criticizes the meaning of love of God in Christianity, which is actually a kind of confusion. But in Islam, the concept of love itself is bringing you to the openness, to the active role of human beings. So this is the mu'ayyad, and then from the mu'ayyad, there is a kind of mabda al-ijab, mabda at-tartib, okay, knowing the priority in doing, and then how we know that there are darajat, and then ijab means we make it everything to be important for us, so we do it, we try to comply with, it's not comply, we try to achieve, we try to target something, and we do, everything is important, not just to say that, oh, this is only optional, that that's not important and I'm not doing. No, mu'ayyad brings you up to the human capability, the best, as because of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though I think maybe he does not mention about love for God, but we know that that is very, very important. When you love something, you can do even something that can be up to, yeah, or we say that we don't even expect that we can do something, so it is beyond. So maybe this is the thing that the West might always mention, beyond the limit, beyond the limit. So we are not just putting our limit here, okay, we are trying to explore everything the best that we can do. So this is the akal mu'ayyad that makes the nature of akhlaq is something to be very open. And that's why I say akhlaq is different from, we understand from fiqh and even sharia. We know the sharia also, because normally sharia is understood to be only like in line with certain certain concept of good and bad. So mu'ayyad is something more, something more. Why we need to highlight this? As I mentioned, these days people are looking into when people are looking into what is the system that can be in line with the human creativity, uncertainty of life, etc. So we say that we have that in Islam from the very beginning, but maybe because of the factor of time, last time people are looking for standardization in society, then our discussion is more into that. But now the discussion in the akhlaq, okay, is this is the nature. So we want to say that it is the truth from the Quran, that and most of the times it is the Muslims who do not understand and do not portray the best feature, the best apa ni, the best implementation from the understanding. Maybe we are not having enough knowledge about that. That's why I say that these things can be your beginning to explore further about this. That's why those who are Quran and Sunnah or Usuluddin or even fiqh also can explore into this, because this can be even in fiqh. This can also touch the philosophical aspect of the concept of good and bad, from where the fiqh also brings the comes with the discuss about that. Quran Sunnah, of course, because it comes from the Quran, but the normally scholars of Quran and Sunnah only look for tafsir. But here we are looking from the perspective of what is akhlaq in Islam. Then we know there are things in which it is our duty of doing. Okay, but your task is just to answer for the exam. Uh, I think that's what I want to bring, because I want to relate everything to give you the basis of understanding, and only you understand why we should learn this, we should learn that, and from what perspective. As I mentioned, I don't go specifically to the slides that you have, because you may have different slides. And now I open for question. In case you don't have, you want to further clarify something. It can be very specific, can be also anything. Okay. Yes.
نفتح مجال كذلك، يعني نذكركم نفتح مجال لمن يريد أن يسأل. نفتح مجال لمن يريد أن يسأل. جهزنا الرابط جوجل فورم، فليسمي أسئلته إذا واحد يستحي أن يفتح صوته هنا.
No حياء في طلب العلم. Everything is clear. كل شيء واضح. هل هناك سؤال؟
Assalamualaikum Ustazah.
Waalaikumsalam. Yes.
Can you explain about the topic Aniyah?
Aniyah, you want me to go slide? I think the slides that we have is not that difficult. It's something that is very clear, isn't it? Because I don't bring issues in the niyyah. Because I follow also others, then I do not need to go for something that is complex. But okay, what do you want to know from the niyyah? You want me to open I do not know either my slides, but I think the niyyah I have the niyyah from Dr. Ismail also. I don't bring from Daras because this is my first semester, but in this next semester, I'm going to provide all notes. But for the niyyah, I think I took from Dr. Ismail. What do you want to understand from the niyyah actually? What are the things that you don't understand about niyyah?
I don't understand the difference between hadaf dan wafiq.
الهدف ذلك في البداية. الهدف يعني دوافع in the process. And then I think you have different notes, isn't it? You study with whom? With Dr. Mashita?
Yes, Dr. Mashita.
So maybe Dr. Mashita is using more complex. Basically, النية والدوافع. Okay, النية الهدف والدوافع. الهدف في الأخير. النية ذلك في هي المستوى الأولى من يعني النية له معنى واسع. فلذلك النية يمكن أن يكون النية في بداية العمل، وهذه النية فقط في مجرد معرفة ما هذا العمل ولماذا نحن نقوم به، وذلك هو الحكم العمل. So this is what we do in our salah, isn't it? And then al-hadaf is something what you want to achieve at the end. Because we are doing something, we are not just performing salah, we are just, for example, you are doing business, okay? What is the hadaf? So you want to go to this hadaf, and then there is a process here, isn't it? So the process is the motivation of ad-dawafi'. So something that to lead you to continue this until you achieve the aim. This is to prove that the concept of niyyah in Islam, in the Quran, does not only highlight on the beginning of the, and then according to Darras, even at the beginning and then in the dawafi', this is related to human strength, of putting everything of human strength into action. So the niyyah is not only like what we understand in fiqh, in which as long as you talaffuz and niyyah, that's it. In akhlaq, we go deeper. Okay, one is for us to understand how the importance of niyyah. To begin with something, you are quite determined why you are doing this. This is niyyah, the first layer. And after that, you have the second layer is the hadaf, and then the dawafi'. Can you understand? A dawafi' is something that motivates you to continue until you achieve the hadaf. Because I don't teach this in my class actually. That is a kind of very quite extensive discussion here. I think that is the main thing that you need to understand if you want to. The rest of it is to understand the al-ahammiyah. Then you can see everything about the ahammiyah. In my class, I have the ahammiyatun niyyah li al-afrad, isn't it? وكذلك للمجتمع. بعد معرفة ما هي النية، وكما قلت على حسب المذكرة يعني the slide that you have. So you just, but the understanding is about this. So meaning to say that Darras wanted to say that the niyyah is not what people think that it is only at the beginning. The niyyah in Islam is looking until the end. So meaning to say that whatever we are doing, it's not only about doing at the first layer. No, it is something strategically. And then niyyah is the things that guide you until you get something. So that's why in English it is about the motive and motivation. I would say this is quite quite complex. That's why I don't touch in my class. But since you have it, this is the thing that I can say. It's good. And for you to, because your lecturer is going to mark the paper. Apa tadi? Okay, what else you want to understand?
Thank you, Doctor.
So, meaning to say that the concept of niyyah in Islam, it also goes into time, to the future. So this is what I say that the concept of niyyah, the concept of akhlaq, everything when we listen. So it's like not only on paper, is something you really walk the talk. Okay, we know that these days people can just talk, but they don't do. Okay, walk the talk, and then in doing walk the talk, not only on one surface level of doing, but Islam provides the system that guides you until the future. Even though, that's why I say, even though we know everything happen bitakdirillah, isn't it? Biqada wa qadar min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But being the role of man in Islam, we cannot take for granted. Because Islam want us to, because this is the only life that we have. So macam itulah. So the akhlak is not something tell you the hukum, that's it. No, it guides you. That's why it is a very dynamic system. Okay? Okay. Any other question? Inshallah, I'm completing my translation on Muhammad Abdul Darras, and inshallah once it is published, then I can spread. It is a very beneficial book to own by all Muslims, actually, to understand actually what is the concept of the system of action. Okay, that is akhlaq. We take for granted because we thought it is only. Okay, other than that, for your exam, what else you want to know?
Assalamualaikum Doktor.
Waalaikumsalam. You are not also coming from my class, right? Zalif?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, you took from what? From whom?
Dr. Mashita.
Okay, Mashita. Okay. What's that?
Doktor, is it the topic, the jaza and juh, important? Because I asked the student from class Dr. Ismail. They didn't touch the topic, I think.
I don't want to say something, but in my class, I asked them to do summary, and I also mentioned something. That's for my class. I don't know. Maybe there is a kind of option ke macam tu.
Okay.
But you studied the juhud, and but jaza actually is not in the I realized that jaza is not in the muqarrar. But in the book we have that, isn't it? I don't think the jaza is there.
But in the course plan that Dr. Masitoh gave, it have the sanction and juhud and effort lah.
Effort saya ingat ada. Effort memang ada dalam kita muqarrar. Tapi saya ingat sanction tak ada. Jaza tak ada.
Okay, thank you.
So I boleh kata mungkin kalau jaza ni dia tak ada lah kot. But jaza is something we have to understand. People can have mistakenly. We thought that jaza is like consequence, like what we have here today, but it's not. Jaza is actually the consequence of ruling of good and bad, in which Allah already mentioned. So talking about the consequence, then it is a lot in the Quran. So then it is better than what they have in utilitarian. So that is the strength of the topic of jaza actually. The juhud, as I mentioned, this is to prove that juhud is not limited, and added more with the fikrah of Taha Abdul Rahman. Then we have to understand that akhlaq is not only following these rules. This is only to guide, but we have to do more. That is basically the gist of al-juhd. Okay? Other than that?
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Yeah, Waalaikumsalam.
I just want to ask, is it the topic from group presentation included in the final exam?
I think I mentioned in class, no.
No. So it's not possible that have a question like to ethic issue.
No.
Alright.
No, that is for the, I don't know other class, what do your lecturers say?
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Ada lagi soalan? Lagi soalan? Syamil Singgi tak ada soalan?
ممكن نراجع عن أفكار رئيسية سيدي طه عبد الرحمن ومحمد عبد الله الدراس يا.
Apa ni? Soalan ke apa ni?
Bukan apa? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. أفكار رئيسية.
Okay.
So disebut
apa dia?
أفكار رئيسية طه عبد الرحمن dengan Muhammad Abdullah Darras. أنا ما وجدتها في الشرائح.
في الشرائح
dalam slide.
Tak ada, saya ada bagi tu kan? Saya ada bagi ilzam tu, saya cakap sebab tu okay, for this time I don't think we ask specifically about that. I don't think also others cover, but as I mentioned, that concept of ilzam that I give you dengan al-juhdu tu memang dia Amrullah Darras punya kan, Muhammad Amrullah Darras. So in case it is us, then you just mention lah apa yang you tengok daripada al-ilzam dengan al-juhd tu, at least something lah. And I think I already mentioned what is the main thing that we the strength of Muhammad Amrullah Darras. And Taha Abdul Rahman, we have the the PDF kan, akal-akal tu semua kan. And then dia sebut tentang salah faham tentang what is ethic itself. Yelah, sebab especially he tried to encounter what is there in the West, but I think that is also what we have among the Muslims. So we thought that akhlak is only al-af'al al-bahdudah. Sebab tu Taha Abdul Rahman juga tak setuju dengan that Madrasatul As-Sa'adah, walaupun dah lama established. Ibnu Maskawai, Al-Ghazali semua guna tu, and many of our scholars, even Al-Farabi, semua guna that quwa thalathah tu, al-adalah tu kan. Tapi Taha Abdul Rahman tidak setuju. Sebab kalau tak, dia kata kita hanya meletakkan akhlak ini hanya kepada sifat-sifat tertentu sahaja, sedangkan akhlak ni satu benda yang terlalu luas. Itu Taha Abdul Rahman. And then dia mengatakan bahawa sebab di barat sekarang ni dia ada akhlak bioethics, dia ada akhlak environment, something akhlak professional. So dia dah letakkan terlalu kecil sangat, sedangkan akhlak ni adalah benda keseluruhan kehidupan. Itu yang Taha Abdul Rahman nak akan sebutkan lah. And then apa lagi disebut? Yang tadi tu saya kata bila al-kamalat. So akhlak ni hanya untuk mengkomplitkan keadaan. Jadi bila dia kamalat ni, dia tak penting sangat. Macam benda yang hajiyat, apa ni kita dalam daruriyat, apa ni dalam maqasid, hajiyat dengan apa? Daruriyat, hajiyat, tahsiniyat. So kamalat tu macam tahsiniyat. Dia kata jadi akhlak ni duduk pada peringkat yang ketiga, so dia tak penting. Tak boleh. So dia kata akhlak ni sebenarnya benda yang penting sebagaimana pentingnya undang-undang. So kita kena ambil sampai ke habis. Kalau tak, kita akan jadikan, bayangkan kalau orang tak ada akhlak kat hidup kita ni, memang teruk lah kita. Semua tak boleh terah, semua bermasalah kan. Jadi tuntutan agama terhadap akhlak ni bukannya kamalat tu sahaja. Bukan hanya menyempurnakan tak tepi, tidak. Akhlak tu daripada tunjangnya memang penting. Itulah pendapat Taha Abdul Rahman. Dia membetulkan pemahaman tentang apa itu akhlak, sebab daripada awal lagi dia membetulkan ta'rif kepada insan itu sendiri, bahawa insan itu adalah insan akhlaqi. Insan bukan insan aqlani. Dia kata itu adalah salah. Sebab kita pun dia memuatkan, dan juga dia mengatakan bahawa sebab kita meletakkan amal ni, letakkan amal sebelah nazari satu nahiyah and amal satu nahiyah. So kita sebenarnya disalah terbawa-bawa daripada kesilapan daripada Greek filosofi. So dalam Islam dia sekali, dia tak boleh penuh nazariyah baru amal, tak. Dalam kita buat amal tu, kita membentuk satu prinsip perbuatan, dan benda tu akan bercambah dan bercambah. Basically itulah kebiasaan yang tiga akal tu. Itu di sisi Tuhan Abdul Rahman. Saya tak pasti grup lain ada belajar ke tak lah. Tapi bagi saya, whatever question is, sebenarnya kalau saya lah nak melihat seorang yang betul-betul dapat A lah. Sebab tu bila final susah nak dapat 38 per 40. Very, very difficult. Saya rasa tak ada. Sebab kita nak tengok student tu punya creativity untuk relate. Think out of box. Itu yang betul-betul A yang kita nak. Bila cakap benda yang ada dalam slide je kan, dia tak cukup. Sebab tu kalau you perasan kalau dalam paper English, dia orang direct terus lah. Minta you relate, minta you apa-apa. Tapi paper Arab saya nampak tidak sangat. Tetapi kebolehan kita menunjukkan bahawa kita mastery dan boleh ni itu yang menjadikan kita lebih lah. Sebab kita kena tahu bahawa lecturer ni dia evaluate you untuk final exam tu atas kertas tu. Jadi janganlah malas nak jawab. Jawab sebaik-baik. Kan? Dah tak lihat siapa you kat luar. Memang melihat kepada kertas jawapan tu. Jawablah sampai puas hati. Macam tu. So kita boleh relate lah apa yang kita tahu. Tidak semesti soalan secara direct. Okay? Ada soalan lain? Tak ada dah kot. Nak conclude dah ke, Syamil?
Saya cek Google Form.
Oh, ada yang tulis
Kalau ada. Tak ada.
Saya rasa tajuk-tajuk tu saya dah sebutlah secara keseluruhan. Dan selebih pada tu, as I mentioned, you have to memorize lah what is on the slides. And after that, of course, we need to have syarah untuk menunjukkan kefahaman dan sebagainya kan. Then I wish you all the best and hopefully the knowledge that we learn from the class, because I think akhlak is important to especially we are all the religious, the seekers, the people who are seeking religious knowledge, really in need of this knowledge. And so hopefully one day we can also spread to others of that. It is not only for the sake of examination, and because it is a very high potential that this area is an area which you can prove to others that what we have in Islam is complete and it is the truth. And as for your information, if you go to the social science, it goes back to the meaning of man. And meaning of man, of course, coming back to the expectation dalam perbuatan dan sebagainya. Dan dalam akhlak ini adalah jawapan kepada melibatkan semua aspek, semua bidang lah. Kan? Sebab tu akhlak duduk dalam semua bidang. That's it. That's all. I also to apologize lah kalau ada if anything shortcomings, and wishing you the best of luck in your final exam. Please remember of the exact time, not to miss the examination. Kan? Ours will be on 2nd July, kan? 2nd of July, isn't it?
Betul. Sah.
Afternoon ke? Itu yang penting. Morning ke afternoon?
Afternoon.
Afternoon, okay. So, jangan oversleep pula tengah hari tu. Pagi pun boleh oversleep, tengah hari boleh oversleep. Dah terlambat. Okay? Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Syukran, Ustazah.
Assalam.
Thank you, Doktor.
Okay.
Thank you, Doktor.
Syamil, nanti kalau ada ni ada rakam